Is that good?
Yeah.
Well, thanks you guys for being here. I know this is an unconventional place, but we had to feature the band, in the show somehow. And this is where a lot of our artists have been spending time this week. This group of artists is from Bolinas, and they've been here since exactly a week, I think, most of them. Making work, producing work, working with students. We did a number of public-facing events, a shorts program, a film screening, and a critique night. The idea is really exchange between this community that they're from and our community, and encouraging our students to start developing and focusing on creative communities here. So that's why they're here. I don't know if we need to do introductions. Yeah, maybe.
You guys want to say anything?
I think we should all introduce yourselves and identify your work in the show so that people can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Harry Shimon, and this amplifier is very close to my ear.
Still louder.
Wait for the plane.
Yeah, wait for the helicopter.
Oh, yeah, wait for
The plane, the plane.
One moment.
Maybe like my name is Perry Shimon, and my contribution to this show is called the Coliseum, and it's 1 year's worth of social media posts. And you'll see it when you come in. There's a large screenshot of my daughter. We were Skyping, and it was very pixelated, and I kind of blew it up large, and Bo helped fabricate this amazing frame for it. And so, yeah, it's composed of a year's worth of Instagram posts, writing images, moving images, and I was exploring some of the ways that we use images today and different material forms that they take.
Hi, my name is Ilka Hartmann, and the photographs, all the small little photographs about our town, are mine. And also, we put out a book that we did a few years ago about our town, and Perry helped me. Oh, sorry. Should I repeat everything?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Ilka Hartmann, and I'm a photographer, and the wall of the little black and white photographs is mine. And also the book about our town called The Town That Fought to Save Itself. And Perry had the idea, because I have 40, 50 years of work, to go through my archive. And we brought it all here in a giant box, and we scanned a lot. And you see some of them on the wall. So now we have a really good idea of the decades of life in our little town. Thank you, Perry. And everybody else who helped me with this. Thank you.
And I'm Ashley Babrock, and we're cleaning something right now. Should I wait? I'll wait.
That'll be a little while.
Okay.
Just the spoiler in the.
Thanks, Bo. our helper extraordinaire, Bo. He's been amazing. Which happens to be the nickname of our town also, is Bo. Yeah, so it ties in really nicely. So yeah, I'm Ashley Babrock, and my contribution to this show is two projects that I did one is recreating some photos of my father from the 70s with myself in them, and Aubrey Trineman over there shot them. And a sculpture about my mother, and I've been working on a body of work based on sort of healing work for myself, and kind of diving into wounds to move past them and then abstract them and present them to people to hopefully engage in a way that is meaningful to others. So, yeah.
Well said. Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie Callahan, and I make work that deals with trying to find the universe in small things. And so this was a good chance to print take advantage of the facilities and work with print, which isn't usually my medium, but I did make a lot of trips to the beach and incorporate things that I would find here, which amazingly enough, you guys have clean beaches. So. And we live in a town that's also really conscious of that as well, but it's easy to find straws, styrofoam, everything else that we're putting into the system. And so this installation was specific to what I found here, and I hope you will enjoy it.
Hi. Public speaking is not my forte. I'm Mariah Gardner, and my work is there's a set of long exposures on the back wall that I took with a medium format camera, and did those in places that I felt like were somewhat connected to the idea of utopia and searching for utopia. One of them is the Grand Canyon, which was obviously a really beautiful place, and I had this amazing experience of walking up and seeing it by moonlight for the first time and feeling totally enchanted. And the other two are Arcosanti that are in the diptych. The next one is a tiny ghost town called Gold Point in Nevada. That's a really funny little place. It's actually very right-wing conservative. I didn't know that when I showed up there in the dead of night. So it's a different sort of utopia for a different sort of people. And then the last one is the town that we live in, which I think is probably the closest that I've come to a utopian community. And the podium that sits back from those has a bunch of postcards on them, and that's part of the project as well. The whole project is called Postcards from Utopia. The idea being that there are the external utopias that we go seeking for, and then there's utopias that we try to create within ourselves, and looking through that through the lens of photography and memory, and trying to understand just what we're creating and why and how we do that. So if you go looking through those postcards, make sure that you turn them over, because there's writing on the back of all of them as well.
My name's Dave H, and I made the little camping scene on the ground there, just with a bunch of electronics that I brought, and it's sort of like a little camp out, my little utopia world.
Also, this is Dave's van.
I don't like talking.
Dave's van speaks for him.
My name's Keith Evans. I did the piece in a corner called Out of Depth, which is using stereo vision, and it incorporates some elements of photos and with an object that was acquired here in town, and just interpreting space and air and water effects, and that space is always being created in our minds, and
my name is Taliason. I'm presenting a work called Orion Sound Station that's about the U.S. government's involvement in a massacre in 2010 in Jamaica, where something between like 70 and 150 civilians were murdered by the police and military. A lot of my work's about the superstructures of power, and especially the invisible ways in which power exerts itself or is transferred to avoid certain types of responsibility. And this work is the culmination of about 8 years of living and working and going to Jamaica to work on pieces about music and the way in which culture responds to oppression there.
My name is Aubrey Trineman, and my intention with this group show was to have an immersive, spontaneous, cathartic experience of just coming to a new place. And so that ended up culminating in meeting someone and photographing them for a day, and then just documenting whatever unfolded. And a lot of that was just very spontaneous, and that's what I wanted. Kind of started by walking around the town and seeing what met me, and then met a really interesting special person and spent the day with them, and we kind of just took turns taking portraits of one another. And he was a very he was a yes man, because he agreed to take portraits of me, and I have a wedding dress that I keep in my car as a reminder to my active marriage to myself, which sounds like a gimmick, but it's a very sincere place that I'm at right now. So I carry that and a wedding veil. And he was very much game to take portraits of me instead of me doing self-portraits. And so we just kind of played. And it's about the power of play and spontaneous curiosity.
Hi, my name is Kate Sterlin, and my piece is called Worship. And it's, for me, it was an exploration into color photography, which I mostly do black and white, so this was a challenge for me. And it's the 16 different shots almost at the end of the gallery.
Hello. My name is Clay Shank, and my work is on the center of the back wall with all the skateboard stuff. The metal sculptures on the floor are things that Dave and Bo and I worked on around this area. Utilizing the scraps from over there, they serve as launch ramps and portable ways to navigate treacherous terrain. And they serve as a nice reminder that you can make something out of nothing. And those collages there on the wall too are made of found materials, also reminding us to make the most of what we have, embody our vulture spirit. And above that, there's a bunch of pictures of skateboard scenes on the Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota, which is part of life that I live, which is out there and involves skateboarding. Those photos, they aim to catch the vibe of the place, which can be pretty desperate, sad, but also really beautiful. And there's a little zine there, which encourages skateboarding as a positive social influence anywhere, focusing mostly on what it could do for the Rosebud Reservation, where skateboard advocates are focusing their efforts. There's been a lot of good stuff happening in South Dakota for poor communities, and Rosebud is the next place where we want to make a little bit of a fire as far as a skateboard community. Other than that, there's a screen there playing my first film called Journey to Skate Boulder, which Perry thought would be a fun thing to show you. It has no volume, but there's no dialogue in it, so it's kind of a cool ride. If nothing else, it's an artist statement, and you know a little bit more about me. Thanks for being here, everybody. We're really honored to be talking.
I think that's good. Are we back? Yes, we're back. Cool. So I think now we're going to have a little bit of an open conversation. I've drafted a few questions that sort of reference the show and the first iteration of the show that I saw of this project in Bolinas in November or December? February. Really? Yeah, so I've drafted a few questions, but then we hope, especially if you've participated or met or spent time with the artist or come to any of the events, if you had questions or comments or share your experience, we'll do that later. So the first question that I have is about, it says, what are some elements of this work and exhibit that reflect the geography of your home, and do you see overlap or similarities between these communities?
Oh yeah, I tell you one thing. Morro Bay, it's got a layout a lot like our home. In fact, when you swim across from the rock over to the sandbar, you guys don't have a bunch of condos lining it, but we have a lagoon in the same way, and that Morro Rock is kind of like our little mesa in Bolinas. Yeah, there are similarities in our land, so we fit right.
Anybody else? I have something like to speak. Go for it. Yeah, oh, okay, that sounds good. Thoughts on place. Yeah, our community, I kind of would imagine, not unlike your community, is going through a lot of changes, and housing is increasingly difficult and unstable. There's a kind of feeling of precarity, especially among the younger people. And yeah, I think, I don't know, for myself, I love where we live. It's a little enclave. It's yeah, small, very community oriented. I think everyone knows everybody. And so much of the rest of my life feels really transient. I'm traveling a bit. And that's kind of the place where I feel rooted and able to create. And then the community is largely about the people that comprise it. And we have a wonderful group of people and a really kind of intergenerational group of friends and artists that I feel really supported by and happy to work with. So it's yeah, I guess it's place and the people that inhabit it, and the greater ecology. We have a really it's not a very developed town. There's a lot of animals and a diversity of wildlife that make it feel really great to be a part of.
I think it's also interesting that we. I think it's interesting that we kind of rolled into town as a group and have so far only gone to like the same 4 places over and over and over again, as if we're still in the town that only has 2 places to eat. But yeah, it's kind of between the Buttercup Bakery and the Sunshine Health Food Store.
Big shout out to Dolly's Donuts.
Dolly's Donuts, Tacos de Mexico. We've kind of, just quadrangled our way. So maybe all smallish towns are the same, and you just find the things that you like, and that's what makes them familiar and lovely, and you work within that. And I don't know, there's a really beautiful thing to that, I think. So if you guys come out, we'll see if you do the same thing.
All I'd just like to add about just the general ecology is that there's obviously such unique and interesting communities of non-human lives in the ecology where the ocean meets the land, and all kinds of geology, and so there's and it's very similar here, and so it's very easy to sort of sink into it and like find out the little differences and be really excited and inspired. So.
Yeah, we don't have otters. You guys have otters, and that's really, really cool.
You have seals?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Seals and seal lions.
Pelicans?
Lots of pelicans.
We got dolphins.
Where is
Where is it? It's north of San Francisco, about an hour, just over the mountain by the beach.
Emma?
Yeah.
So you guys in Bolinas know that people don't know where you live because the myth is the sign is always taken down and it doesn't exist.
We scramble Google Maps all the time.
My question is, should we take our signs down?
Yes.
you want to speak to that? It's complex.
Yeah,
I have to start with PowerPoint.
Let's see, yeah, I don't really have a proposal for that, but when I first moved to Bolinas, oh, go ahead. Yeah, when I first moved to Bolinas, I was like really wanting to tread lightly, and I knew that it was a community that was very protective and kind of, you know, has a reputation of being hostile to outsiders and very anti-tourist. And at first I was like, I felt kind of uncomfortable and just really wanted to be respectful and tread lightly, and wasn't sure about that whole sentiment and idea. And the more I became part of the community, I realized that it wasn't necessarily a hostility and like othering and, you know, being exclusive, but that it was actually an extremely inclusive community that very intergenerational, very interclass, very you know, make room for everybody. And the really special thing about our town is that we really do, you know, make room for everybody and include everybody, and that is willing to participate in a genuine, heartfelt way, and in a way that I've never experienced before, and that is really, really beautiful. And the hostility does come from, you know, kind of people coming in and wanting to just sort of take advantage, or like have a wild weekend and leave, and, you know, leave their trash and, you know, be like kind of selfish and not engage in the community, because, you know, it is a beautiful place, just as this is a beautiful place, but the most beautiful thing about it is the community and the relationships that are just really special. And I, you know, I am protective of it, and I also just want it replicated throughout, you know, all communities, just that sentiment. And yeah, and that way I want to share it.
Any other thoughts then?
I've lived there for a long, long time, many decades, and the woman at a museum, the gallery in our little town, said, "What have I done lately for the town?" And that's kind of the motto that everybody has, that you contribute something to the town. That's what feels the best. Yeah, that sums it all up for me.
Yeah. So in light of that, do you feel like as artists there are, you know, challenges or true benefits of working in a small rural community? This is potentially a question for myself too, and within this small community, but for our students and for professional artists practicing in this area, what are some of the benefits or lacks of benefits of working in rural communities?
So I can talk to if it's easier. I get really excited about that question, Emma, because I feel like when you have community, you have support, right? And especially like multi-generational community, that's so powerful. But I felt like where we're from in Bolinas, it feels like a playground in a lot of ways. Like, I can't think of any lack of platform for experimentation. And even just down to the literal, like, there's space. Like, there's a community center that you can rent for cheap or free. And it's like the community wants you to hold events there. And it has such a long history of getting weird and like experimenting and ritualizing communally that I feel like it's such a safe zone for anything. And there are just multiple forms of that. And so that's a good reminder, I think, for anybody who has resources. Like, this place is amazing. The resources that you guys have are incredible. And I think just to remind my own self that there's a playground wherever you are, and to just, I don't know, use your imagination to take advantage of the platforms that already exist, instead of prescribed platforms like a certain type of gallery or setting. Like, really let your art inform that, and the community will show up as long as you're like spreading the word and asking people to come. So platforms take many, many forms.
Yeah, I think I moved up to Bo kind of to have like a sanctuary space from doing really emotionally exhausting documentary work, and having a place where you feel safe and seen even if it is kind of like an increasingly expensive, kind of like mostly white, like trapped in the past utopia, is is really valuable for me. And I think for me, part of the commitment to living there is also participating in the world outside of these zones, because it's also like very insular, and the kind of navel gazing and nostalgia, I think at the end of the day is not the kind of paradigm that we need to be currently inhabiting on this planet, but is also one that is really relaxing and quite pleasurable. So I think it's an interesting balance of living in these zones while also, maintaining that it's such an incredible privilege to be there. And I think, at least for me, that involves trying to understand how, we engage with the rest of the world. Hey, Aubrey has a comment.
Just like what you're saying about trapped in the past. I just think even that in and of itself, like your feelings about that, if you have community, like if you have a smaller group of anybody, which is a community, right? You can at least have a conversation about that, about being trapped in the past or whatever. Like there's things about Bolinas that I feel like I would like to be more progressive or whatever, but I feel fully enabled because there's such communication. It's possible. Like that's the first step, where like maybe you have political beliefs or like you feel stuck in a lot of ways and you don't know how to productively use that as output and like be heard. If you can create community, you can have a conversation, and that's the first step. So I'm gonna ask Tali later about being trapped in the past because I'm interested in that, and we'll have a conversation.
Great.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on making art in smaller communities. It's such a global, digitally connected world now that it's kind of nice to see a decentering of arts from the major urban environments and less of a need for it. And so many of them become so prohibitively expensive, including our little enclave, which is really close to a major city and major airport, which makes it very helpful in that respect. But I think it's cool to be part of a global conversation, and hopefully not on the like neoliberal homogenizing front of that. And I've been reading Edouard Glissant, is a Martinique post-colonial philosopher, and he has this notion of mondialité that Hans-Ulrich Obrist has kind of been championing very vocally with a contingent within the kind of international art conversation. And I really like this concept. It's just basically that as opposed to globalization, you have a global dialogue, and it doesn't seek erasure or a domination, but rather to a kind of creolization, to use his term, a blending or a hybridity. And I think a lot of people in our little community travel a lot too, and it feels like there's a lot of interesting conversations happening. And most of the work that I put into this, there is some stuff that are shot in the town, but it's all over Europe and New York and LA. It's global in scope, as I feel like we're all kind of increasingly globally aware.
So one of the coolest things for me in moving to Bolinas, which I only did about a year ago, was meeting all these people. And some of them I had known before from coming up there a lot. And a few of them I met just from being in the water. But most of these people became my friends because of the first Tributaries show that we did. And having only lived in West Marin for 6 months, being invited to do that show and having the engagement with everybody, and getting to meet Ilka, whose work I had long admired, and just having this experience of feeling like I was making art with other artists who were also, becoming my friends, was really, really special. And I think that is something that you can only do in a small community, because then you see these people all the time at the market, in the street, whatever it is, and you're making art with them, but they also become your friends, which wouldn't happen in a larger city.
Also, you can be alone, too.
I don't think I agree with that, though.
No.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with the point about, I don't think it would happen in a larger city. Mostly because I've only lived in larger cities except for this. Excuse me. So I think that it's the kind of dialogue that you're open to and what you create, and there's a reaching out and a connection and discovery, and that can happen, I think, anywhere. I mean, in LA, I've lived in certain neighborhoods. You go to the same place to go shopping, to go out buy your food, you know, walk your dog, that kind of thing. So those opportunities, I think, to create small town and community exist everywhere, and it's up to each of us, if we want that, to take responsibility for making that happen. It may feel less safe to do it in an urban environment than it does in what you described as a protected, safe place to come home to, where you're seeing the same people all the time. To make that approach in a more chaotic urban situation, but I think that it's also very
I
possible.
meant that more in like the physicality of it, because living in a large city, I lived in San Francisco for 20 years, and so you would go and you would do something, and at the end of the day, you would go home, and some people went home to one neighborhood, and some people went home to the other, and so in a small town, you probably walk home down the same street. You know, and so there's more, there's more likelihood of seeing each other, and so that's kind of what I was getting at, is that it's not so much that you're not trying to forge these relationships, it's just that it's much easier to do so in a small community, because you're literally running into people all the time.
Because there's only one street?
Exactly.
There's two. How many
It also
people
sucks.
are in Bolinas?
It's true.
What was that? 10 people in Bolinas? How many
Yes,
people?
she asked how many people are in
Bolinas.
Nobody's there right now.
1,000, and most of them don't live there full
Just
time.
1,000, okay.
Yeah, I don't know actually, but in that ballpark.
2,000.
550
You feel like you see the same.
I gotta say, I grew up in Manhattan, small island off the East Coast. And everywhere you go, you bump into another fucking artist. And now I live in Los Osos, and everywhere I go, I bump into another
You see him at Pagnol Bakery?
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
plug
we've
that
seen
place
it.
because it's so good.
I just want to ask and have you guys share a little bit about that first iteration of the Tributary show and sort of how it came to be and where you see it going next after the. I know the project here at Cuesta was different than that, and that I invited them here for a week and they used the Cuesta facilities and worked with students and developed new work. They worked a lot, but I think there's still a lot of connections to that first original show, mainly because of you guys. And I don't know if you had thoughts on that.
I'm happy to.
Go ahead, Perry.
Yeah, I think we kind of been talking about doing a group show for a while, a group of us in Bolinas, and came together very organically, and there was a nice artist-run space that's really affordable to rent downtown. And so we just took that and kind of went and printed a bunch of mostly photo work with about...
This is an evolution of a show that you had
yeah.
in February?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Which came...
With some local stuff, photos put into it.
Yeah. The first show kind of we threw together in a month or two. There was an opening, like a
Same artist, same group.
similar configuration. Yeah. The core, pretty much everyone here, plus a few more.
So, can you talk as artists about projecting from February to now, what that experience was like, and how you tweaked it and bent it around the corner and that kind of thing?
Yeah, questions on how you thought about making this with that gestation period, how you approached the work.
I'll talk a little bit. I was really excited to explore this area with the intent of I came here with one photograph that I had in the previous show, and took that idea and wanted to emulate it to what I found here. So more a conversation with this place. So, and it was also kind of a contemplative, this place informing my thought process and what was already going through my mind, and I think a lot of other people.
What was that photo?
It was a photograph of, I have these thoughts that probably most people have of thinking about something you would never do. And I said, I'm going to do it. So I staged a band in the financial district in San Francisco, and it was a peaceful demonstration of modeling kelp across the street. But I took off all my clothes and did a meditative walk across a crosswalk, and had someone snap the image. And
that's the image you brought to this show.
That's the image I brought to this show, yeah.
And that evolved to the 3 stacks and the log?
Yeah.
Carrying the log?
So we all went surfing over on that other side, and seeing that power structure was a metaphor in itself, but then to see it, hidden behind the sand dunes and seeing people walk across that, it just clicked.
But no more naked you with the kelp? I mean, you don't like our kelp? Or
Well, what was available on
you
that
feel
beach?
so close to our kelp?
Yeah, there were different things. There were different things on that beach that wasn't quite what I imagined. So yeah, I again was working with what was there. So there was a nice little dolphin carcass without a head. That was interesting. But we saw live dolphins too. That's right.
Down there? Thinking about the show?
What you brought versus what you
Me again. Only because one of the things that's in this show, so I got asked to be a part of the show kind of late. I mean, Perry says that we had like 2 or 3 months, but I feel like it was more a matter of weeks. And, he kind of looked at some of the stuff and we were talking about what he wanted to do, and I had this idea. And so one of the pieces that I have is just a stack, and you can take it and read it and, make it a paper airplane or whatever it is. But it's an email that I sent to my mother basically talking about what this project was. Like all of a sudden I realized that I wanted to do this project and I wanted to like encompass everything, and it became like this, whole like cloud around my brain. And of course, when it came time to print for the show, I didn't have anything, that had anything to do with it. And so this was an opportunity for me to like think on that a little bit more and widen the scope, and then hopefully carry that forward for, however long.
I just have one more question, and then we'll take any other questions and wrap up. But I feel very strongly about community colleges in general, but particularly Cuesta for what it does for, what it does for our students, the resources that are here, the opportunities that are here, and how much support there is for a lot of people in a lot of different journeys of life. I think it's a really radical and important thing to be working here and to a really important place for our community. And I just wondered if any of you had started thinking about that and thought about the significance of working in a community college environment in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, you have ceramics, metalworking, woodworking, painting, printing, anything you might want that. Anything that you want to do, you can just go over there and get it done. So the more tools and things you know how to use, that means you can make everything. So if you can imagine it, you can come here and take a class and make it. It's like where we're at, we don't have these facilities, so it is difficult to build. And so, yeah, it's one of the best reasons to go is come here and make whatever you want. But everybody's already here. So.
Yeah, I wanted to say how very much I appreciated everybody that let us use all their facilities, their computers, their printers, the materials, everything, the gallery. And I remember so very fondly that when I came to America, I'm from Germany, and my mother said I could study whatever I wanted to do, and I decided to take up photography in a junior college, and that's where I learned all the photography I knew, which has given me so very much pleasure in my life. I couldn't always make a living with it, but it has given me the skills, and I see the instructors here teach just like I was taught, and for that to continue, and all the young people a few days ago coming for the first time and being so interested and seeing the first images yesterday in the darkroom and just being so surprised about the magic. I just think public education is just very, very important. If we get any chances to vote for funding for that, we should always do it. So thank you.
Yeah, so I personally went to 8 years of community college before transferring to a 4-year. And I love community college, and this is such a wonderful place, and it's been so lovely to be here. And yeah, I just believe in community colleges wholeheartedly, and just, yeah, I'm really glad to be here.
Can you tell us about the van?
He doesn't want it.
Near his face so they can hear us.
Let the van speak.
Yeah, I used to live in artist warehouses for the last probably 15 years. It's kind of a way to get it done where, you know, everybody gets together and maybe there's wood shop, metal shop, etc. kind of like you have here. And it was kind of coming to an end in San Francisco, and so I decided I would get a van and put in it everything that I do at the warehouse. And so I got this van in Houston, and then put like a recording studio, dark room, turntables, typewriter, so you can just, I could do whatever I want. But I got, yeah, I'm enrolling right now. Everybody's interested. But yeah, so then I got the warehouse and the van.
Is it related to the van with a giant bug on top of it in the parking lot?
No.
It's not two seats related.
It's just sort of a.
Is that yours?
Well, that's my real estate.
Beautiful.
All I gotta say.
So they are related.
Well, the geography brought us together, and part of the geography is we can't afford to make the work we'd like to do. This issue of making a living ties to these vehicles because we live in them, basically. Well, we have homes, but it's you know,
There were 2,500,000 people in the 50s, and now there's billion. Now there's 7 billion. So this issue of every place around the world saying, "Oh, what are all these people doing here?" It's just this is where we are, you know. So I built this structure on my van. I'm influenced by people that do it well, and I tried my iteration of it.
Could you describe it for the minutes?
Yeah, so I have, a lot of people come into town with these, the adventure vehicle, with a lot of capital. There's some beautiful, it's insane that what people are putting on their cars and how you can, it's amazing. So I try to do my version of it and build a unique situation where instead of just having the storage container on the top, using the rack that was on the truck, I put it to the test and took old tent poles, and my studio mate here is she works with fabric and dyeing fabric, so we altered a tent structure. I took the poles and put linen over it and fiberglass that, and it ended up looking like a cicada shell, and so when I was making it, it's a cocoon, and it was on the ground when I was making it. When I put it on top, I was like, oh no, what have I done? So
you guys are the butterflies.
Yeah, and I get a lot. The police look, they don't care, but everyone's like, is that legal? So we're testing it out here. It's great. a good place to, you can sleep
Working
in it.
great.
Yeah.
It's also really helpful if you get lost and you can't find your
Yeah, it was really funny the first day they were here. There's a number of really eccentric vehicles in this room. I was like, oh dear, all these cars. Does anybody else have any questions about their work individually, or?
Yeah, I don't need that.
Oh,
Thank you.
Nobody
But I
seems to like
noticed
them.
a lot of the work is collections of things, collections of postcards, collections of images, collections of lucite presentations, watercolor pieces. And it seems a nice reflection of community, these collections, but was that conscious in a conversation between you, or was it an accident that much of the work evolved into these collections?
I think we're all just hoarders.
Digital hoarders.
Whenever.
You have a question next time.
Yeah, just to reply briefly, I think, yeah, we just all create these enormous de facto archives with social and with all the media that we produce anyway, and then like there's just so much deluge of information. And,
You mean humans, not just you guys.
Yeah, humans generally, you too. Like,
you don't know me that well.
And yeah, and so just how to make sense of the deluge. It's just, just such an overwhelming amount of stuff. Archives are interesting.
But I think also to that question, like most of us didn't know what each other were doing until today. I mean, we kind of all like had these conversations, but getting together and meeting was a really difficult thing, even though we live in a very small town, and so we only actually had 1.5 meetings in the like 4 or 5 months that we've been planning this. And so it is interesting to see how many things overlap just maybe because of the way that our brains work. But there was actually no conversation earlier about, you know, what people's projects were and how they might intersect.
Oh, maybe it's a good second to speak about some of the artists who couldn't be here but have worked in the show.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The most recent edition of the show came via text message about an hour ago from Pavel Kruk, who's a conceptual artist. He's been teaching in Europe all summer and wasn't able to make it down. And he sent a text requesting that somebody take a pencil and write the 3 words, "It hurts us," somewhere on the wall. And you have to remind me your name again. Pearl did that, so you guys can look for it in the gallery if you like. Vanessa Waring, that's how you pronounce her last name. She just gave birth and wasn't able to make it. She included these really beautiful watercolors. And then there's a collection of correspondence, all the cat cards you might have noticed in the gallery wall when you came in, between 2 friends. One passed away last year, and she was really fond of cats, clearly, and our friend Tina Ann, who I think inherited a greeting card company, had this incredible abundance of cat cards that she would send for every conceivable occasion. And I was giving Janet a haircut one day, and I noticed this really kind of massive stack of cat cards, and she told me it was all from Tina Ann, which it's really beautiful actually. And after Janet passed, her sister took them and cut the backs off in order to recycle them and send them to her grandkids. So they're going to have this second life. And they're just stopped here for a month in San Luis Obispo before they continue on.
I think she sent her a card every day, as I remember, while she was sick.
Any idea what that owl is doing in there?
Oh, yeah. The owl was a note from Janet's sister to me that was saying, here's the collection, and expressing her kind of gratitude for the engagement that we had about it. And I thought it was fitting to include because, you know, an owl in some cultures is this sign of transition.
We have some of the owls here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I was on the Carrizo Plain, and so this beautiful white owl at Painted Rock. There's these kind of Chumash paintings of what look like owls, you know.
Out of the plains.
The petroglyphs, yeah, exactly. Yeah. which seemed remarkably like kind of not enigmatic. There was like an owl and a thing that looked like a snake and a rattlesnake, and it all seemed. I mean, yeah, I just couldn't believe how much they related to what we were actually experiencing when we were there. So that was an interesting experience. Emma and I went down before the show to take some photographs.
I just want to say, forgive me, I can't remember your name.
My name's Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah.
Your piece was probably the most impactful for me with the interactive and what you had to write about it, and then also your photos where you reenacted with your father. Just because I have similar experiences with myself, with my family, and I just want to let you know that like it actually holding that actually hit me. So it was really something else. So it's working. What is it?
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to express that.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I encourage all of you after this is done to go back to the gallery and find these people if you remember what their work is, and
just kind of wanted to like part of my work and part of just moving through life as a human. I deal with a lot of anxiety and depression, and the biggest difficulty in that is the feeling alone with it. And so I really, part of my work is to kind of normalize and to kind of encourage compassion and not feeling so alone. So that really is, I feel like, a huge part of the suffering is just the relieving the aloneness. So yeah, thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
And the more you look, the more you see.
Yeah, we're all in this together. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Last year I hosted a lighted boat parade and an art show in Baywood Park. And as I was listening to you guys talk about vehicles, I just went, wow, that's just really an unbelievable expression of art. The individuality. I'm actually working on an adventure vehicle, I call it. But it's, to me, it's a healing process. My dog just passed away, a few friends just passed away. And I find working through that, I have to be tactile. Kind of like you holding those globes, it takes it to another place so you can go through the healing process. But this is going to happen. We're doing one September 8th, which is in about 3 weeks. And the boat parade is kind of morphing into this wonderful community event where we launch small boats and crafts. But the art part, I didn't know what I was going to do about it. We have professional artists. I'm here in Los Osos, Baywood Park. And I was just struggling. Okay, we're just kind of doing the same art show, putting up pieces. And listening to you, I really started developing a whole concept. I want people to bring their adventure vehicles, and that would be the show. It would be so much about the next generation, the transition, the whole, there's expression about the consciousness of where to live. The art, it's an expression about you. There's surfboards on top, there's equipment inside, there's a availability to work. I just saw this as, wow, this is the real contemporary art show that can happen.
So you guys are all going to stick around, right?
Well, I'm giving you an invite. And you will be, hosted, and I'm probably going to have to put this all out there to my little community of Baywood Park, which is like boat. And I'm sorry I didn't spend more time with you guys. I've been going through a tough time myself, but it was all developing. I've been going through a healing, and it's all about my vehicle. The more you talked about it, the more it became apparent what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, I hope you guys can connect after. And again, as I was saying, if after this is over, I encourage you to find these guys and talk to them individual about their work. There's a lot of depth, I think, in each of the installations that they've done that is worth having a conversation about that we can't address in a panel of 12 people. So, I have a few thank yous and then I'll release you. It's been a very, wild and fun time to have all these people here and working in the department, and faculty have been incredibly supportive, troubleshooting, allowing them to use the space, letting them interrupt some of their classes, inviting them to talk in some of their classes. So big thanks to this department for being so supportive. Beginning to Bo, who's been an angel among men. He's the sculptor. But also to Richard, who's the I think it's safe to say that without either of their support, this show would not have manifested in the way that it did. So big thanks to them. And Alonso, there's so many things.
We can't forget about Esther.
Emma! And I think in a time where there's not a lot of funding for the arts or support for the arts, it's really amazing, especially in this small community, for the gallery to have the support it does from the Miossi Trust. I can't say it enough, so big thanks to the Miossi Trust.
The part of the community I know, thank you to Emma, because she brings the best art in this whole area to this community, and I would go out of my mind if you weren't here.